Welcome to Jonathan Reads his thesis, episode 4, the methodology. Okay, this is actually numbered chapter 3 in the thesis. Chapter 3, crowdfunding crowdfunding activity at Australian universities. 3.1, methodology. In 2011, Australian university staff set up 2 crowdfunding campaigns, 56-inch circus and Subak with Art Festival. These are the first campaigns that I've found where the fundraisers have chosen to list their university affiliations in their campaigns. They mark the beginning of research crowdfunding in Australia. At the time that I began this project, it was unclear whether crowdfunding would be a disruptive model for research funding, be adopted as part of the status quo, or disappear after a while. I wanted to know, is crowdfunding a sustainable research funding model for Australian universities? To understand this new activity, I adopted an inductive approach, in 2014, seeking to observe how research crowdfunding was being conducted in Australia. I wanted to observe the behaviour of researchers and administrators at universities to understand what was happening. As my training and experience were in qualitative research, it seemed most efficient to use those approaches to understand this emergent activity. This imposed limits on the generalizability of the research. And then I have a table. So it says that the ontology is subjective, the epistemology is constructivist, the reasoning is inductive, the data collection is qualitative, the method is case study, the data collections are scoping study. I need to change that to interviews, secondary data, and the data analysis is descriptive statistics for the scoping study, coding for the interviews, and textual analysis for the secondary data. Figure 3.1, map of research methodology for this project. To understand if crowdfunding could be sustainable, I needed to understand how and why researchers were undertaking crowdfunding, and how and why universities were supporting them in this activity. To do that, I sought to understand 2 things. What was the scope of the activity? How were universities reacting? As described in the introduction, crowdfunding is a cultural phenomenon. As such, the culture that it sits within needs to be taken into account. I've sought to do that. Reword that. I've sought to do that by adopting an exploratory and descriptive approach. With the resources at my disposal, I sought to develop a robust Australian case study rather than an international approach. I sought to identify patterns of relationships that emerge from the case study. Eisenhart and Grebner, 2007, Yin, 2014. This limits the conclusions that can be drawn from this project. I felt that was appropriate because, as Liz Downthwaite has written, most of the existing literature on crowdfunding does not take into account the context of the campaigns themselves, the surrounding communities, and the differing formats of projects and goals. Downthwaite, 2017, page 164. To investigate this new phenomenon, I developed 2 data sets that were central to my research. These shaped the stages of the research. Stage 1, a scoping study, review of 79 crowdfunding campaigns organised by academics from 27 Australian universities between 2011 and 2015 and the material associated with those campaigns. Stage 2, 23 interviews with crowdfunding academics, N equals 9, university administrators, N equals 13, and crowdfunding service personnel, N equals 1. Conducted in 2016 and 2017, along with the material associated with those campaigns. Figure 3.1 provides a map of the research methodology for this project. The scoping study review provided an understanding of the scope of the case study. The descriptive analysis of the statistics collected provided an overview. See the description of stage 1 below. The interviews provided the bulk of the data for the case study and were thematically coded. See the description of stage 2. During both stages, a significant amount of secondary data was collected relating to the crowdfunding campaigns. This data was read closely and used to add depth to the scoping study, prepare for the interviews, and add depth to the analysis. This data supplements the data collected during stage 1 and stage 2 and is discussed within those contexts. 3.2. Stage 1. Crowdfunding campaigns conducted by Australian academics. Before I could understand how crowdfunding sat within the university research funding ecosystem, before I could understand where crowdfunding was positioned within the university research funding ecosystem, I needed to understand the scope of research crowdfunding in Australia. To build a national case study, I needed to gain an understanding of the scope of activities by staff at Australian universities. To understand the scope of this activity, I searched for campaigns where fundraisers had identified themselves as university staff members. Scope. In 2015, I reviewed all the crowdfunding campaigns by Australian academics between 2011, the first campaigns I could identify, and 2015. I found that 36%, N equals 16, of Australia's 43 universities had no experience of staff conducting crowdfunding for research. Of the 79 campaigns that were identified, 46%, N equals 36, came from just 7% of the universities. 72%, N equals 57, of the campaigns were successful, either by reaching an all or nothing target or raising more than $1,000 in a Keep It All campaign. This open data set is available via Figshare, O'Donnell, 2017. I searched public information on several crowdfunding services: Chuffed, Fund Science, Get Funding, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Possible, Rocket Hub, and Thinkable. I selected these crowdfunding services based on media coverage of their work with universities or public announcements of relationships with Australian universities. Because I was focusing on an Australian case study, I excluded services such as Experiment, which only hosted campaigns from the United States of America, USA, at the time I was collecting data, 2015-2016. At that time, no Australian university was hosting their own crowdfunding platform. Since then, at least one university, University of Sydney, has set up their own site based on the Scale Funder platform. scale funder 2015. I searched the selected services for Australian universities' names, e.g. Australian National University, or common acronyms, e.g. ANU. The university names were drawn from the 43 organisations listed in tables A, B and C of the Higher Education Support Act 2013, Australia, Commonwealth of Australia, 2014. All the data was collected through Google searches of publicly available information published by the selected crowdfunding services. Searchers used the following syntax: site, domain name, in URL, project or projects, search string. An example would be site, kickstarter.com, in URL, projects, quotation marks, Latrobe, close quotation marks. Yeah, okay, so let's try that again. Searchers use the following syntax: site, domain name, in URL, project or projects, quotation marks, search string, close quotation marks. An example would be site, kickstarter.com, in URL, projects, quotation marks, Latrobe, close quotation marks. Searches were conducted between 5th of June 2015 and 28th of January 2016, with the results limited to projects that closed before 12th of September 2015. These results were combined with a small number of examples that have been collected from media reports between 25th to 28th of June 2013. All data was reviewed manually to ensure that it related to the target university and not a similar name to our university overseas, included the name of a staff member rather than a student or alumni. Where there was doubt, I searched the university's webpage for a staff page of the person in question. This process is not definitive, as some Australian universities do not have a staff page for its staff member, and was consistent with the Australian Government definition for research, Department of Education and Training, 2015. This manual check allowed me to eliminate false positives, such as campaigns undertaken by students, e.g. as part of my current PhD at blah. Campaigns undertaken by alumni, e.g. graduated from blah. Campaigns for activities undertaken at universities, e.g. we have hired space at blah. Campaigns endorsed by university staff, e.g. has been endorsed by blah. And other campaigns that mentioned universities but didn't directly involve staff from that university. This resulted in a data set of 79 campaigns. It's later. 3 campaigns used Rocket Hub, 4 used Indiegogo, 10 used Chuffed, and 62 campaigns used Possible as their crowdfunding service. I could not find any projects from Australian university staff that had used Get Funding or Kickstarter. I was not able to gather useful data from Fund Science and Thinkable. The scope of my research ensured that all campaigns in my sample involved staff from Australian universities. The scope of my search. What does this mean? From the public information available, it was not clear which campaigns were managed or supported by the universities. Oh, now I understand. Okay, I need to rewrite that. As such, this data provides information on the activities of staff members at Australian universities, rather than providing information on the official activities of Australian universities. I need a bit more info. I focused on staff at universities because I wanted to explore research activities, which are generally undertaken by staff and postgraduate students. I found that I couldn't reliably differentiate between campaigns undertaken by undergraduate, honours and postgraduate students. However, I could reliably identify projects undertaken by staff. Since staff have a stronger connection with universities and students, I view staff activity as an indicator of activity at universities. It should be noted that the sample would be much bigger and much more diverse if activity undertaken by students and alumni were taken into account. My data collection provided a sample of 79 funding campaigns between October 2011 and August 2015 from 27 Australian universities. The data included both successful and unsuccessful campaigns. For each crowdfunding campaign, I recorded the campaign title and link to the campaign website, date the campaign ended, funds requested, funds pledged, and funds raised, where necessary converted to Australian dollars at mid-market rates on the day that the campaign closed. Number of contributors, project leader, and the university mentioned in the campaign. Using this data, I calculated the funds won as a percentage of funds requested. I assigned each campaign to a broad discipline of research, e.g. chemical sciences, economics, law and legal studies, using the two-digit Field of Research, FOR, codes in the Australian and New Zealand Standard Research Classification, Australian Bureau of Stats, 2020. The data on all 79 funding campaigns is publicly available on Figshare. O'Donnell 2017. That is a repeat. The data set contains information on funds requested at the start of the funding campaign, funds pledged during a campaign, and funds raised at the end of a successful campaign. It does not take into account the funds available after bank fees, credit card fees, and service fees from crowdfunding platforms have been deducted. Figure 3.2 shows the difference between these stages of a campaign. It also only contains information on the activity during the fundraising campaign rather than the project that happens after the campaign has been completed. That is, it refers to the work that is planned and described in the fundraising campaign documentation rather than the expenditure of the funds raised and the work that is actually undertaken as a result of the campaign. So then I've got a kind of diagram. At the top it says start of the campaign, funds requested equals Australian, we want total funds requested. Total funds requested equals Australian $1,229,233 by campaigners at the start of 79 campaigns. During the campaign, total funds pledged equals Australian $581,066. Sorry, $581,066 by 6,066 supporters during 79 campaigns. End of the campaign, total funds raised equals $558,053 from 5,804 supporters from 63 successful campaigns. Start of the project, funds available after banking fees, crowdfunding service fees, and credit card fees. Note, not to scale. US dollars converted to Australian dollars at mid-market rate on the day the campaign ended, where necessary. Figure 3.2, the different stages of the crowdfunding campaigns. For each of the 79 campaigns, I searched for blog posts and other articles that these crowdfunders had written about their campaigns. While there were not a lot of these reflective documents, they did help. The ones I found did help to provide an understanding of the concerns of the individual academics and of the work involved in conducting an academic crowdfunding campaign. 3.2.1 Analysis of the review of crowdfunding campaigns. I looked at these crowdfunding campaigns as a form of innovative research funding undertaken primarily through personal networks. They provided a strong contrast to traditional research funding undertaken primarily through government, industry, or philanthropic funders. Between 2011 and 2015, staff at 29 Australian universities chose to list their university affiliations in 79 crowdfunding campaigns. These crowdfunding campaigns involved staff from 27 of 43 Australian universities. To raise funds, researchers described their work to an estimated 580,000 people, and the public demonstrated their engagement by providing Australian $558,058 in donations. These campaigns mark the beginning of a new model for research funding activities in Australian universities. While there is clear evidence of interest from staff in experimenting with crowdfunding, only 3 universities had 5 or more campaigns. A third of the universities showed no activity at all. There is little evidence of continued or repeated activity by most universities or by most staff. See table XXX. During this period, activity is tentative. Without encouragement or support from universities, this new model for research funding could become a niche activity or disappear altogether. While this data provided an understanding of the activity at that time, there was limited statistical analysis that could be done on this relatively small data set. Of the 79 campaigns that started, 16 failed to raise any funds at all, either because no funds were pledged or they failed to meet their target in an all-or-nothing campaign. The lowest amount raised was $8 in 2 different Keep It All campaigns, aiming for $30,000 each, 0.03% funding. The lowest target achieved in an all-or-nothing campaign was Australian $1,050 in an Australian $1,000 target, 105% funding. It was not possible to determine the target amounts for 4 Keep It All campaigns. The overall funds raised by the 2 different types of campaigns are shown in Figure 3.3. So Figure 3.3 has 2 columns. One is an all or nothing column, and the other is a Keep It All column. And they are graded for how much money. So Figure 3.3, number of all or nothing and Keep It All campaigns by funds raised. And so they're banded for $0, $1 to $1,000, $1,001 to $5,000, $5,001 to $10,000, $10,001 to $15,000, $15,000 or more. So the all or nothing has 16 campaigns at the $0 mark. It has 12 campaigns it has no campaigns at the $1 to $1,000 mark. It has 12 campaigns at the $1,000 to $5,000 mark. It has 20 campaigns at the $5,000 to $10,000 mark. It has 9 campaigns at the $10,000 to $15,000 mark, and it has 6 campaigns at the $15,001 or more level. And you can see from the total column numbers up across on the vertical axis that comes to a bit over 60 campaigns, probably about 63 campaigns. Okay, in the Keep It All column is much shorter. It shows no campaigns in the $0 category. 6 campaigns that raised between $1 and $1,000. 4 campaigns in the $1,001 to $5,000 range, 2 campaigns in the $5,001 to $10,000 range, 2 campaigns in the $10,001 to $15,000 range, and 2 campaigns in the $15,001 or more category, and they come to about 15 or 16 campaigns in total. Okay, 6 campaigns that technically succeeded by raising some funds in a Keep It All campaign. In Keep It All campaigns, failed to raise less than $1,000. Raised less than $1,000 Australian. $1,000. As Australian $1,000 was the smallest all or nothing target in my data set, it seemed appropriate to nominate this amount as the lower level for significant funding in Keep It All campaigns. So even though 63 campaigns were technically defined as successful, only 57 campaigns met their target or raised more than $1,000. These 57 campaigns represent a 72% success rate. To put that in perspective, the success rate for the major funding programs of the Australian Research Councils was 17.8% for Australian Research Council ARC 2017 Discovery Project grants and 15.2% for National Health and Medical Research Council NHMRC 2016 project grants. Australian Research Council 2016, National Health and Medical Research Council 2016. The best funded crowdfunding campaign, Parrots, the Pardalot and the Possum, raised $73,000, even though they were only seeking Australian $4,000, 183% funding. Since I completed my survey, they've conducted 3 more campaigns: Operation OBP 2016, Operation PKO, they should all be in italics, and Operation Owl Dog 2018. Across these 4 campaigns, they have raised over Australian $365,000 from almost 5,000 donations. These 4 campaigns, taken together, make the Difficult Birds group of the Australian National University the most successful academic crowdfunders, research crowdfunders in Australia. In terms of repeated campaigns, they have not conducted any campaigns since 2018. As I did not conduct interviews at the Australian National University, I have very little additional information about this research group or their campaigns. All campaigns attracted 150% or more of their target. This ability to raise over 100%, sometimes over 150% of the funds requested is a clear difference between crowdfunding and other funding models. At the other end of the spectrum, one wonders what a researcher does with Australian $8 raised in a Keep It All campaign. These campaigns define the extreme limits of the funds raised in this data set. Of the 63 campaigns that raised funds, that raised significant funds, 63. Okay. Of the 63 campaigns that raised funds, the average amount raised was Australian 8,858, and the median was Australian 6,417. This is quite a small amount for a research grant. Parrots, the Pardalot, and the Possum drew its funds from 1,156 pledges 3 campaigns attracted no pledges at all. An additional 8 campaigns attracted less than 9 pledges. Again, these are the outliers. The average number of pledges for successful campaigns was 92 per campaign. The median was 59 pledges per campaign. This slightly underrepresents how willing the public were to respond to these campaigns, as it does not include pledges to unsuccessful all-or-nothing campaigns. In an all-or-nothing campaign, pledges are released back to the supporters if the designated target is not met. These unsuccessful campaigns represent a number of people who were willing to support the project even though the crowdfunding campaign was ultimately unsuccessful, so that their funds were not called upon. It's difficult to estimate how many people needed to visit the campaign pages to achieve this level of pledges, but 2 sources point to a 100-to-1 ratio. A review of 139 projects run on Rocket Hub estimated that before a project hits its initial goal, an average of 108 views was needed to generate 1 contribution. Burns et al. 2014b, page 12. This correlates roughly with data from non-profit donation websites, where an average of 1.1% of visitors make a donation. M+R 2016. This would mean to attract 1,156 pledges, Parrots, the Pardalot and the Possum would need to bring between 105,000 and 125,000 visitors to their campaign webpage. The average of 92 pledges would require outreach of approximately 8,300 to 10,000 visits, and the median of 59 pledges would require attracting approximately 5,300 to 6,300 visitors. To understand the range of disciplines covered by this activity, all campaigns were coded against the 2002 2-digit Field of Research classification listed in the Australian New Zealand Standard Research Classification, Australian Bureau of Statistics 2020. Campaign pages were examined to see what field of research they related to. If there was any uncertainty, the campaign was according to the broad research discipline of the academic involved. Figure 3.4 shows the 12 out of a total of 23 fields of research represented. The most popular field of research was language, culture, and communication. Language, culture, and communication. Field 47. Field. FOR. Field. FOR. Field of Research 47 with 25 campaigns, 32%, reflecting the emergence of crowdfunding from within art and design communities. So then we have figure 3.4, count of campaigns categorized by discipline as represented by the 2020 field of research categories. And we've got 30, which is agricultural, veterinary, and food sciences with a bit over 10 campaigns. 31, which is biological sciences with about 3 or 4 campaigns. 32, which is biomedical and clinical sciences with 5 campaigns. 33, which is built environment and design with about 3 campaigns. 39, which is education with about 4 campaigns. 40, which is engineering with about 5 campaigns. 41, which is environmental sciences with about 5 campaigns. 42, which is health sciences with 9 campaigns. 43, which is history, heritage, and archaeology with 3 campaigns. 44, which is human society with 5 campaigns. 47, which is language, communication, and culture with 25 campaigns, a clear winner. And 50, which is philosophy and religious studies with 1 campaign, which I presume is the Buddhist life stories campaign. Of the 43 universities that I searched for, I could only find 27, 63%, named in crowdfunding campaigns. Of those, only 3, 7%, were named in more than 5 campaigns. Deakin University, n equals 21. New South Wales, University of New South Wales, n equals 8. And the University of Western Australia, n equals 7. Deakin University, with 21 campaigns, has demonstrated that this can be an ongoing, useful activity for Australian universities. Verhoeven et al., 2013. The number of campaigns varied from year to year, with 2 campaigns in 2011, 7 in 2012, 28 in 2013, 18 in 2014, and 24 in 2015. Table 3.1 shows the spread of campaigns across this time period. When this data is coupled with reports of some universities either prohibiting their staff from undertaking campaigns or not valuing the results, M. Thompson, 2014K, it indicates an uncertain future for this activity. This is discussed further in the chapter on sustaining crowdfunding in Australian universities. And we want chapter number. Okay, and then I have an enormous table. Table 3.1, campaigns per quarter and per year. Campaigns per quarter and per year according to closing date. Note that closing dates could not be determined for 3 campaigns. And so we've got a column for the university name, and then we've got 2011 quarter 4, 2012 quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, 2013 quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, 2014 quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, 2015 quarter 1, 2, and 3, and the total. So Deakin, 8 campaigns in 2013 quarter 2, 4 campaigns in 2013 quarter 4, 5 campaigns in 2014 quarter 2, 1 campaign in 2014 quarter 4, 3 campaigns in 2015 quarter 2. Lots of campaigns, regular pattern, 21 in total. Then we've got University of New South Wales, 1 campaign in 2012 quarter 1, 1 campaign in 2013 quarter 1, 1 campaign in 2013 quarter 2, 1 campaign in 2014 quarter 1, 3 campaigns in 2014 quarter 4, 1 campaign in 2015 quarter 3, 8 total. University of Western Australia, 1 campaign in 2015 quarter 2 and 6 campaigns in 2015 quarter 3, so 7 campaigns in all. And then we have, I'm not going to go through them all, but we have Griffith, Sydney, University of Technology, Sydney, Newcastle, Griffith, Sydney, UTS, and Newcastle Griffith, Sydney, and UTS with 4 campaigns each, scattered across the graph. Newcastle with 3 campaigns, 2 at the start and 1 right at the end. ANU with 2 campaigns, Curtin with 2, Flinders with 2, a whole bunch of unis with 2, James Cook, La Trobe, QUT, Queensland, Western Sydney, and then Adelaide with 1, Bond with 1, Central Queensland with 1, Eden Cowan with 1, Macquarie with 1, Murdoch with 1, Southern Cross with 1, New England with 1, Tasmania with 1, Sunshine Coast with 1, Wollongong with 1, and BU2 with 1. If all of these funds were channeled through universities, they would represent just over Australian $500,000, Australian $558,058 of new funds, excluding crowdfunding platform fees, credit card processing fees, and some foreign exchange fees. In terms of overall university funding, this is a very small amount. For contrast, in 2020, the Australian Research Council awarded almost 400 grants, each worth $500,000 or more. So 400 grants worth more than the total in just 1 year. Australian University Research Council, non-dated. It is, however, new money coming into a system at a time when government funding for research is at its lowest since Australia began keeping records. Australian Broadcasting Company 2014, Parliamentary Library 2014. Given the low level of government funding for research and the historical reluctance of industry to fund research in Australia, iChub 2014, it is somewhat surprising that more universities have not encouraged this activity. There is a strong contrast between the small number of universities with a large number of campaigns and the large number of universities with only 1 or 2 campaigns. This would seem to indicate that only a small number of Australian universities were encouraging their staff to undertake crowdfunding. Where 1 or 2 campaigns mentioned universities, staff may have undertaken this activity as individuals rather than part of their official duties. Rewrite this sentence. The trials. 3.2.2 Discussion of the review of crowdfunding campaigns. In this ability to fund individual activity, campaign review. In this ability to fund individual activity, crowdfunding is similar to arts funding. Practicing artists can apply to Australian art funding agencies as individuals rather than through an institution such as a university. Art funding bodies, e.g. the Australian Council for the Arts, have a long tradition of supporting artists regardless of their employment status. Similarly, many architecture and design academics maintain a commercial practice in conjunction with their academic activities, with their most interesting commissions being considered research activity within the scope of their university role, as well as independent commercial activity, Lucas 2016. This ability to fund an individual sets crowdfunding apart from need a linking sentence. This ability to fund an individual sets crowdfunding apart from most government and philanthropic funding. Other than arts funding agencies, government funding agencies prefer to fund universities and other recognised research agencies rather than individuals. Philanthropic funding is often reserved for charitable organisations, which includes universities in Australia. Rather than being required to submit applications for funding through their university, academics can choose to crowdfund their research in conjunction with their university or as individuals. Clarify. In turn, universities can choose whether or not to allow their staff to undertake crowdfunding campaigns. Crowdfunding gives all academics the choice of whether to channel funds through the university or not. Crowdfunding, like other funding schemes, allows researchers to pursue curiosity-driven research that align like Crowdfunding allows researchers to pursue curiosity-driven research that aligns with their personal interests. Through their crowdfunding campaigns, researchers can share their passion for their work. In appealing for fundings, these crowdfunding researchers are seeking to connect their work with the personal interests of potential funders. To do that, they are drawing on their own personal network. This network operates independently to the employment at the university and blurs the boundary between the professional and the personal. These Australian campaigns provided some examples of this blurring of the researchers' personal life with their professional ones. The researchers behind Buddhist Life Stories of Australia are all practicing Buddhists in 2014. Christopher Moore, who sought funds for research into computer gaming, is a keen computer gamer and talks about playing games with his son. Moore, 2013A. Maybe add in group chat. Their projects are a reflection of their interests and also a reflection of the interests of their intended audience. During any crowdfunding campaign, fundraisers inform people about the campaign through friends, family, colleagues, acquaintances, and the press as they attempt to reach a wide public audience. Hugh, Gerber, and Greenberg, 2012, Palmer and Verhoeven, 2016. Research crowdfunders see this as a direct way to connect with the public and demystify their work. As Poblet says, in the end, a successfully achieved crowdfunding goal is more than the sum of its donations. It is a shared co-production. Poblet, 2014, page 178. 3.3, Stage 2, Interviews with crowdfunders and administrators. Since crowdfunding can provide a new source of research funding, I sought to understand how universities might encourage staff to explore this opportunity. To gain a deeper understanding of crowdfunding at Australian universities, I interviewed staff related to this activity. These interviews were authorised by two human research ethics approvals. RMIT University Ethics Authorisation 19613 from 28th January 2016 to 31st of March 2019. RMIT University Ethics Authorisation 20729 from 7th of April 2017 to 31st of March 2023. In 2016, after gaining permission from two universities, Deakin, also referred to as the Regional University, and the University of Western Australia, also referred to as the Old University, and one crowdfunding platform, Possible, I interviewed administrators, N=7, and both successful and unsuccessful academic crowdfunders, N=14, at the two most active universities identified in the review. I also interviewed a representative from Possible, the crowdfunding platform that hosted most of the research crowdfunding. Do these numbers match the higher numbers counted? And then I've got a table. Table 3.2, crowdfunding campaigns and interviews by organisation. So I've got across the top, Regional University, Old University, and crowdfund platform. We can center all this. Okay. So, crowdfunding campaigns to 2015. Regional University 2021. Old University 7. Types of campaigns. Regional University all or nothing. Keep it all. Old University keep it all. Interviews with academic crowdfunders 2016. Regional University 6. Old University 8. Interviews with university administrators 2016, Regional University 3, Old University 4, interviews with crowdfunding platforms 2016, crowdfunding platform 1. Total interviews, Regional University 9, Old University 12, crowdfunding platform 1. Between them, these two universities had supported 28 campaigns, 35% of all Australian university campaigns identified in the review. These interviews provided two comparative data sets that could be used to analyse this emergent behaviour. To understand the full range of activities within universities, I selected a purposeful, non-random sample of academic and administrative and academic staff from these two universities to interview, Eisenhart and Grebner, 2007. Campaigns included examples from the scoping study dataset and examples that had been conducted after that data was collected. From each university, I selected both successful and unsuccessful crowdfunders across a range of academic levels, while seeking to maintain academic levels. Table of academic levels. While seeking to maintain gender equity. In selecting academics, I sought a variety of views: successful versus unsuccessful campaigns, early career versus senior academics, single campaigns versus multiple campaigns. I sought to include any academics who had undertaken multiple campaigns, as their experience was so rare. For the administrative interviews, I sought a range of managers and administrators who had supported the activity from across different administrative areas in the university, such as research officers, advancement officers, and finance officers. I spoke to administrators who had worked on different aspects of support, including senior leaders who were sponsoring support programs, project leaders who had set up these programs, those assisting with the development and running of campaigns pre-award, and managing the process of bringing the funds into the university post-award. I also interviewed a representative from Possible, the crowdfunding platform that had hosted the majority of the Australian research crowdfunding campaigns. Interviews were conducted in 2016. While most interviews were one-on-one, 20 interviews, a small number, 3 interviews, involved 2 interviewees. In preparation for the interviews, I reviewed multiple sources of secondary data in 2014. Their campaign pages and videos on crowdfunding platforms, blog posts and social media posts related to the campaigns, newspaper reports about the campaigns, and reports published by the universities. Academic interviewees were asked to tell the story of their campaigns, with the campaign site open in front of them for reference. This encouraged academics to provide a narrative account of their crowdfunding activities. Academics were also encouraged to refer back to the crowdfunding website during their interviews. Crowdfunding website. If they had conducted multiple campaigns, they were asked to focus on, but not constrained to, their most recent campaign. Interviews with administrators all started with the seed question of, please describe a problem associated with crowdfunding, to try to avoid discussions based on organisational narratives of success. This framed the interview as a place where both disadvantages and advantages of research crowdfunding could be discussed. In all cases, interviews were semi-structured and were designed to last an hour. In some cases, where interviewees were willing, interviews continued beyond the 1 hour mark. The shortest interview was just over 30 minutes. The longest was almost 1 hour, 23 minutes. Because crowdfunding is a public process and each crowdfunding campaign is unique, it will be very difficult to quote from these interviews and maintain the anonymity of the interviewee. Therefore, interviewees were provided with the opportunity to anonymise their interviews and asked if they would like their interviews to be kept confidential or published as open data. Participants in 6 interviews, 4 academic teams, 1 administrator, and a possible representative made their interviews available as open data. Quotes in this thesis, while indicative of themes across all interviews, have been drawn from these public transcripts. Their campaigns provide an indication of the breadth of campaigns being supported by the 2 universities. Linda Fitzgerald and 3 others raised Australian $37,783 from 285 donors to attend the Homeward Bound Leadership Program, O'Donnell and Fitzgerald, 2016. Carly Monks and Joe Dorsch raised Australian $5,823 from 73 donors to fund archaeological fieldwork, O'Donnell, Monks and Dorsch, 2016. Catherine Noske, Paul Clifford and Lucy Dugan raised Australian $15,485 from 163 donors to support Westerly, a creative writing magazine, O'Donnell and Noske, 2016. Mel Thompson ran 4 successful campaigns, 3 at the time of the interview, O'Donnell and Thompson, 2016B. Mighty Maggots versus Flesh-Nom Bugs raised Australian $9,970 from 120 donations for a clinical trial to treat a flesh-eating bacteria with maggots. Hips for Hipsters raised Australian $12,413 from 180 donations to test novel antimicrobial agents for patients with implants such as artificial hips. No More Poo Taboo raised Australian $10,988 from 161 donations to develop an awareness-raising campaign for Clostridium difficile, C. diff, a gastrointestinal infection that can kill through explosive diarrhea. Hats On for the Wiser Hot Seat raised Australian $5,570 from 37 donations to fund a science festival event. Campbell Thompson was the project leader for crowd research at UWA. O'Donnell and Thompson, 2016A. Claire Makita was the general manager for Possible, an Australian crowdfunding platform, O'Donnell and Makita, 2016. Analysis of the interviews. Interviews were analysed both through close reading and thematically using in vivo. Rowley, 2002, 2012, Guest, Bunch and Johnson, 2006. Interviews were coded at the individual level and then synthesised according to the role, administration or crowdfunding, okay? Administration or academic. To gain an understanding of the different perspectives of these 2 groups. Themes emerged that reflected the concerns expressed in the literature, e.g. the work involved, as well as new themes that had not necessarily been strongly discussed in the literature, e.g. concerns about risk. Chapters were written around the themes that the author judged were most dominant, e.g. well-being, or most interesting, e.g. organisational risk. Interviews were recoded to ensure that each chapter was as representative as possible. For example, for the chapter on risk, interviews were recoded for comments that discussed risk, including synonyms and antonyms, legal issues, or related issues that had been identified from the literature. Several key themes quickly emerged from the data. Codes related to the amount of work involved for funds returned were grouped with codes related to gratitude for donations and support to form an overarching theme of well-being. This formed the basis for the chapter on research crowdfunding through a lens of self-care. Codes related to well-being included need for research funding, anxiety around research funding, amounts raised. professional recognition as research funding, promotion, employment. This level of okay. Need for research funding, anxiety around research funding, amount raised. Professional recognition as research funding. Promotion, employment. Engagement with the public, engagement through social media, engagement through traditional media. Fun and enjoyment, playfulness, joy, innovation, new possibilities, experimentation, energy, enthusiasm, valley of death, lowland donations. Workload, time management, job stress, reward for effort, learning, personal development, professional development, planning of campaigns, execution of campaigns, choice of project, suitability of project for crowdfunding, career stage, early career academic, senior academic, entrepreneurship, asking for funding, receiving funding, generosity, friends and family, colleagues, the public, audience, luck, serendipity, chance, competition, cooperation, reciprocity, university management, economic rationalism, administrative support, administrative processes. Codes related to the lack of professional recognition were grouped with codes related to academic independence to form an overarching theme related to issues around the norms of academia. This formed the basis for the chapter number related to issues related to research crowdfunding at Australian universities. Reputational risk, controversy, personal morality, entrepreneurship, power, policies and procedures, ethics approval, conflict of interest, independence, intellectual property, opportunity costs, time, new public management, asking for funding, social norms, public attitudes, fairness, misrepresentation, expectations, risk, harassment, opposition, lack of recognition, promotion, non-performance, failure to deliver, disappointment, experimental learning, payments, non-payment, internal support. Codes related to the management of risk by individuals and organisations were grouped under an overarching theme of risk. This formed the basis for the chapter number on risk in Australian university crowdfunding. Fraud, corruption, intellectual property, misrepresentation, breach of contract, breach of terms, false pledges, non-payment, policies and procedures, conflict of interest, missed opportunities, reputation, risk, stalking and harassment, social norms, personal morality. Let me go back to here. Codes related to how the two universities manage the process were grouped under an overarching theme of administration. This formed the basis of the chapter on chapter number vision, public intellectual empowerment, skills development, public engagement, public funding, leadership, inertia, business case, risk, innovation, flexibility, opportunity costs, experiential learning, reward structures, academic recognition, academic promotion, peer support, mentoring, academic support, training, administrative flexibility, donor management, selection, audience, career stage, campaigns, all or nothing, keep it all, public engagement, social media, outreach, fail fast, funding, gratitude, surprise, individual. Donors, organisational donors, procedures, tax deductibility. There was, of course, some serendipity in this process. For example, when I came across Rachel Katz's work on the norms and counter-norms of research, this provided me with a useful framework to bring together a number of issues related to how crowdfunding fitted or did not fit within existing research practices. These interviews form the basis for discussion throughout the rest of the thesis. That's the end of chapter 3. Thank you, everyone in stream.